This is the CHRILLCAST. I'm Chris.
Well,
I'm Chris Raygun. Look at me.
And this is the last time Chris is on the podcast this week, and so we want to thank him for being on all week.
yes, thank you.
No worries, man.
And as part of our thank you, he gets to be the judge for this face-off Friday, our fourth face-off Friday. The third one hasn't come out yet when we're recording this because we record everything a week ahead. That way, if anything ever happens and we can't record something, at least we're a week ahead, and we're prepared.
We're good to go.
That's smart.
So this week on Face-Off Friday, before we get started, you should go subscribe to Chris's YouTube channel. And he's already told you about it 4 days in a row, but I'll let him, if he wants to give a quick little spiel, tell everybody about his channel.
I make I make political content sometimes. I make video game content sometimes. My phone just went off. Sorry about that.
It's all good.
And I just make whatever the hell I want. Honestly, you've seen. If you're watching this one, you've seen it. Like like by this point, I don't know what you're doing watching the last thing in a run of things.
And you're not already aware
you psycho,
of Chris.
You watch the last Final Destination and not the others like a psychopath.
What Chris is saying is the content produced this week on the channel is so good that if you've missed
exceptional.
You need to go back and watch it, especially our over an hour long exclusive interview with Chris. So, anyways, so this week on Face-Off Friday, the prompt is: would Xbox have been successful without Halo? And before I make everybody angry with my arguments, I'm going to explain how this is going to work. So this is essentially run like as Adam Corlick described it, a courtroom. The judge is going to choose the order in which Will and I present our arguments. He's going to have the option to allow objections with a sustained objection or an overruled objection. And Will, so I don't mess this up for the second week in a row, if he says overruled, it means the objection's out. Right? That's how the courtroom does it? Okay. And then if he says sustained, it means he agrees with the objection. So we are allowed to object with each other. I don't usually do it. Will's the one that jumps in with objections. Yeah. It's not usually me.
I did it one time, and then Adam's like, no, I don't agree with you.
That's one of the options. And then the second thing is, after we present our arguments, you'll have the opportunity to ask one question for clarification's sake. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah, I think so.
And then after we present our arguments, we'll do our closing argument in the opposite order. And then you can choose to either pick a winner or throw the case out and give your own reason.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And we've had both of those things happen so far. The first week we did it, the person's like, nope, both of you guys suck.
You guys are both idiots.
Shout out to Rin. She was really awesome. So yeah, if do you have any questions before we get started?
No, I think let's jump in.
All right, so who's going to go first?
I want to hear the opposing. I want to hear like why it wasn't. Why it couldn't have succeeded without Halo.
Oh, so that'll be Will.
Yeah, that's me. All right. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury. No.
We should probably state I'm defending that it could have been successful without Halo.
Oh, I thought you already said this.
Will is defending that it wouldn't have been successful without Halo. Just for everybody's sake, I'm reiterating that's what it is. We talked about that before the podcast, Will.
Okay,
yeah.
Sorry. Everything's blending in now. So I'm getting... Okay. All right. So I have a couple of points of why I think it would not be successful without Halo as a launch title. So first, let's talk about the original Xbox exclusives. So of the roughly 140 exclusive original Xbox games, not many sold well. In fact, only of the top 20, top selling games, only 7 were exclusives. And of course, the top 2 are Halo 1 and 2. And in fact, of the 25 million copies that those 7 exclusives sold, over half were actually Halo games. So 13.5 million were between Halo 1 and Halo 2. So definitely Halo was the killer app for the Xbox at launch, and it really moved a lot of units right out the gate. For the second thing is Halo established the Xbox identity. So Halo and Xbox are pretty synonymous, and there's a good reason why. Halo was revolutionary for a console FPS at the time, and because it was so successful, it actually established Xbox as really the FPS console of that generation. And looking into this, it was actually kind of fascinating to realize this. But in those, the top selling games with the original Xbox, 7 of them were FPS games. Whereas for GameCube, it had 0 in the top 20. And then for PlayStation, there was 0 in the top 40 games. Thus, Xbox, again, became known for their FPS titles. And that was largely because it launched with Halo, and Halo really defined that as, Xbox's quality. That's why you bought the Xbox. Also, I may have cheated a little bit because I didn't count Metroid as a FPS. And then for my third point, hold on one second. Halo made what Xbox Live is today, especially Halo 2. Halo, the original Halo was supposed to launch with Xbox Live, but Xbox Live was not ready in time. And it really became the vehicle for, how Xbox actually defined itself as a brand moving forward into the later generations. So, going into this, Halo 2 was the most played Xbox Live game on the original Xbox. Prior to Halo 2, there was less than 1 million subscribers. After Halo 2, there were 2 million subscribers. And then it, slowly grew after that. And again, for, Halo 1 was very popular. Halo 2 became more popular. And when Halo 3 came out, the service actually almost doubled. So it actually doubled the amount of sales of the Xbox and also new subscribers from the previous year when Halo 3 came out, which I think is pretty amazing. And then the thing is, because Halo was so successful on Xbox Live, it also changed the way that Xbox really viewed itself as a company or as like a part of Microsoft. So you see that now going in this new generation, Xbox is much more concerned about like a service model versus the actual hardware model. And that, again, it traces its roots back to Xbox Live being so successful, because that allowed things like arcade to be successful, that allowed things for Game Pass to be successful, and now things like smart delivery, as well as backwards compatibility, all is baked into the pie, with Halo allowing that Xbox Live to be so successful. So summing up, Halo gave a reason for people to buy the Xbox originally. It differentiated it from the other consoles by really defining what an FPS could be on a console and allowing FPSs to really thrive on that console. And it gave Xbox its identity and ended up impacting the entire business philosophy of Xbox moving forward. So without Halo, Xbox would have probably died, if not after that first Xbox, definitely after the 360.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense.
Do you have a question for Will?
No, I think that was pretty well reasoned. I want to hear this now.
All right. I know this is an uphill battle, so we're gonna roll with it. All right. In order for me to make this argument, we got to trace back to 9/9/1999, the launch of the Dreamcast. Okay, I want to make that clear. We're back in '99. The original Xbox launched in 2001, in November of 2001, basically 2 years later. Prior to this, Sega had 3 straight years of net losses between the launch of the Dreamcast and the launch of the Xbox. 98, 99, 2000, 2001. Sega is just on a downhill slide, right? At this time, Microsoft is actually considering purchasing Sega outright. Just flat out, we want Sega's game division, and they were in talks with how they were going to do this. Part of the reason why they were considering it was the Dreamcast games themselves. The Windows CE was on the Dreamcast. There were already games that came out for the Dreamcast that would be easily translatable to the Xbox. So being able to have that technology and that background would have helped them to do that. So they were considering buying them. So I'm going to kind of flesh this out. What if Microsoft, instead of producing Halo, had just flat out bought Sega as part of their launch lineup, right? So the Sega Dreamcast games would have immediately been available for the Xbox. That includes games like Sonic, Shenmue, not Perfect Dark, that's rare. The Virtua series, Super Monkey Ball, Phantasy Star, Panzer Dragoon. Those games would have all been available on the launch of the Xbox if they had gone that route. And I think this alternative route is part of the way they could have been successful. So Microsoft famously struggled in Japan, and they still do. Microsoft still struggles in Japan with all of their launches. If they would have bought Sega right out the gate, you could have had a successful launch in Japan. You would have had franchises like Sonic. You would have had franchises like all the other ones I've mentioned, the Virtua series. There's some Sega sports games like Major League Baseball. There's the Football Manager games. I'm not sure if those would have been popular in the US, but they're popular in Europe. And Crazy Taxi. All of these franchises would have been available to Microsoft on the launch of the Xbox. So now you're looking at a completely transformed demographic across the US, or not across the US, across the world on how Xbox launched. If you had Sega in Japan under the Microsoft division, and you had the wildly popular Sonic franchise in the US, can you imagine a launch of Xbox with those franchises at the back of Microsoft? Obviously, this is all hypothetical because it didn't happen. But if you didn't spend all that money on Halo and Bungie and you bought Sega, Microsoft could have launched the Xbox successfully without Halo. Do you have any questions?
I think because it's so hypothetical, it's kind of hard to
imagine the world that way.
Imagine, because it's everything is so fleshed out
at this point
by the reality of like what actually happened. Am I supposed to be deciding on a winner for this round, or
not yet?
Okay.
So you can ask me a question though if you'd like.
I'm curious as to how you're gonna elaborate on it. I don't really have a specific question, but I'm curious as to like where this goes.
So this doesn't go much further than this. I'm just going to warn you.
Okay.
We go from this. Usually the guest will ask a question. It doesn't matter if you do or don't. That's totally up to you. But at this point, Will and I will give another 2-minute closing argument. So technically I have to go first now. Will will go second. So this is like the closing argument in the courtroom, right? So this is me approaching the jury and saying, hey, this is why you need to pick me, right? So here we go. My closing argument. Imagine a world in 2001 with a very different landscape than what we actually had. Bungie is still producing games on Mac. You don't have Halo on the Xbox. They're launching the third-person weird Halo you saw at CES that year, where the Master Chief is voiced by a guy that sounds like he's got a very nasally voice. I don't know if you've seen that clip, but it's pretty hilarious.
Yeah.
And in this case, Microsoft has purchased Sega, and they're launching a brand new Sonic Adventure game on the Xbox. They're launching Shenmue 2 on the Xbox as a launch title. They're launching Panzer Dragoon Saga, the on-rail shooter. They're launching some interesting House of Dead remix games, which are also Sega-owned. They're launching some 2K Sports. And Microsoft's got all the power of Sega. And that's really, I think, the hardest argument to make is the U.S. launch. But in Japan, which is the center of a lot of the gaming atmosphere in general, Microsoft actually has a successful launch because they have Sega under their wing, and they have all of Sega's franchises, and they never end up struggling in Japan because they have Sega. And because they have Sonic, they also have a successful launch in the U.S. I know Sonic had lost popularity over the years, but in 2001, Sonic was still a pretty popular franchise. This is before Sonic 06 had come out, remember? Sonic 06. But before Sonic 06, we're looking at a very strong, very, very prominent character in Sonic, right? You have to remember, without Halo, and Sonic is still as big as he was back then, this could have been a big, big launch for Microsoft. So I'm saying that if Microsoft had not gone with Halo, which I still love Halo, don't get me wrong, they could have been successful purchasing Sega and launching with a lot of Sega franchises on the console. That's my argument.
Okay.
Okay, so for my closing argument, I'll just start off with the numbers again. So, 13.5 million sales for Halo 1 and 2, 8 for Halo 2, 5, or it's like 8.5 for Halo 2, 5 for Halo. I mean, you can pretty much roughly translate that into, console sales. So, Halo 2 is probably at least 8 million people or 8 million consoles were sold for that game. And without that was a tremendous boost. That console honestly didn't sell very well. I believe it's in the 30 million range. And without that would have been, a huge chunk of those sales would be gone. And then without Halo, Xbox doesn't have an identity. Chris's argument that it would start, pumping out Sega games, but then it's just going to be another Sega clone essentially. So it's just going to follow that, trajectory of Sega going down instead of establishing an entirely new property and a new direction for a gaming company. And then once again, without Halo, you don't have the refined Xbox Live experience on the original Xbox. Perhaps it would have come for the 360, but because it already started in the Xbox, when it was on the 360, it was perfected by that point. And then it allowed other services to come in like Xbox Live Arcade. And now we're seeing it where it's really transforming into this new generation. And then at some point, Xbox might just be purely a live service. That's it. So I think without Halo, Xbox would not have succeeded, and certainly wouldn't have the identity that it has today.
Right. Okay. I have thoughts. I think that when you argue that if they had purchased Sega, they would have been successful, there is a case to be made that what would be successful isn't the Xbox. It's like the Dreamcast, or like the successor to the Dreamcast. So it'd almost be like the Dreamcast would have succeeded. Like if they had the influx of money from Microsoft.
That's fair.
And there's also just the simple truth of that, like, Sonic and Shenmue and like all of these series, Sonic, I've always hated Sonic, so I already have like a bias here. But like Sonic as a series like had been dwindling for a while, and the reason Sega was in such a situation in the first place was because they weren't bringing what they needed to bring to the table. And I don't know if necessarily throwing more money at them in the form of a Microsoft acquisition would have made much of a difference. I feel like you probably would have ended up with the same kind of titles. You would have ended up with a similarly confusing Shenmue. You would have ended up with a similarly declining Sonic, because that's just how franchises operate over long periods of time. I do, however, think that the Xbox could have been successful, but only by virtue of Microsoft being so swollen with money. Like, there's just nothing that could really destroy the Xbox, because if they felt that it was worth pursuing, they would have just continued to pursue it. And they're able to eat costs like nobody's business, because their games are just available on so many different platforms. Their services are available on so many different platforms. Their primary company, Microsoft, makes far more than PlayStation's parent company, Sony. Microsoft tech is in everything. So like Microsoft could theoretically bleed money forever and still just be able to just pump out these consoles. So I do think the Xbox could have been successful without Halo, but I would argue that you wouldn't have an Xbox to be successful without it. So I feel like I would have to throw it over to Will.
Yes. Sweet.
But the premise is correct. I do think they could have been successful without it. Just not necessarily in it's more in a roundabout way.
Yeah. I thought about making my argument that way and framing it that way, but I just thought it was more interesting to consider the acquisition
your
of
argument
Sega.
was definitely more interesting.
It's
I
more
definitely thought about the money thing too. I was like, I could throw that in, but I was like, I'll just argue around the game instead.
The thing I did forget to mention, and I have it written down here, don't forget to mention, Microsoft was already planning to purchase Rare, and I just was going to mention, like, hey, they could have had Rare and Sega. And that would have been interesting. But
yeah, we could have just crapped on both companies.
Yeah. Anyway, that was the only thing. Just want to throw that out there. Like, they literally, like, if they would have not put Rare on, Kinect Sports and Kinect games, that could have been more interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
I am curious, just one last thing, if the Xbox event will show a Banjo-Kazooie game, because that would be cool.
I hope so.
That would be pretty. I'm hoping for Fable, Halo, Banjo-Kazooie, and that would be pretty great. That'd be a pretty great day.
Yeah.
I've been waiting for Fable for so long. Honestly, if I had to choose, I would prefer Fable gameplay over Halo. I know
That's
that's kind of
crazy.
blasphemous, but
All right.
Yeah, I understand.
Did you have any closing thoughts? Having been on the podcast for 5 episodes now, and you're,
just
at
very
the
hard.
end of a very
Very
long
fun.
segmented podcast.
Yeah, man. I mean, I've been podcasting this whole day basically, but it's fun, man. It's a cool little show. I like the style and the format of it. It's very unlike a lot of shows that I've seen.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And we hope that you continue making content on the main channel as well as your podcasts.
I will do my best.
When I have like 4 hours of lawn to mow, it's like excellent. I can go to 2 of the Snark tanks, and I'm like, okay, boom, I got the lawn covered. So
Pretty perfect.
there you go. We really want to thank you for coming on the channel, and if you ever want to come on again, just reach out, or maybe we'll reach out to you. Either way, you're always welcome to come back.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks. Yeah, I'm sure. Hit me up whenever.
And if you want to play Halo 3, just hit me up on the Twitter DMs. I'm on board as soon as you're done with your move.
Yeah, once I'm all settled in.
Exactly. Did you want to sign this one off?
Thanks for watching the CHRILLCAST, everybody. Get out of here. Go.
Why are you still here?